Well, let's discuss what's been happening with Dave Keating. He's our correspondent in Brussels. Dave, how significant is this agreement then on aircraft subsidies?
This is quite significant, and it's really good news for businesses because these tariffs were really hurting many businesses on both sides of the Atlantic. Essentially, what happened here is there was an existing dispute that predated Trump, but he escalated it majorly, slapping all of these tariffs on EU goods, and then the EU put in retaliatory tariffs, and it just kind of escalated over 4 years until we got to this point. So it was really important to the EU that Biden undo all of these tariffs that Trump had put in. And indeed, EU policymakers here in Brussels were getting very frustrated that he hadn't done that yet. Now, they had a freeze on these tariffs that they had agreed in March that was set to expire on July 11th. But what they've done here is essentially frozen it for 5 years. So they've agreed there will be no more tariffs relating to this dispute for the next 5 years. And they've also drawn up a kind of document of mutual understanding here about what should and shouldn't be done on each side when it comes to supporting their aircraft manufacturers so as to avoid further disputes in the future. Essentially, they've parked the disputes over things that already happened and said we're going to deal with that in 5 years. But in the meantime, here's our mutual understanding of what is acceptable in terms of state support so that we don't have any further problems.
All right, Dave, so a pretty significant breakthrough there, but it is clear that on a number of other issues, the EU and the US remain divided.
Yeah, there are still a lot of issues where Brussels and Washington are far apart. I mean, for instance, this is only one set of tariffs that they were able to find a solution to, but on another set of tariffs, which is on steel and aluminium, they were apparently not able to reach a deal. It was a bit confusing from the press conference, and we're still waiting for official conclusions from the summit. But President von der Leyen said essentially they wanted to reach a deal in which the U.S., into which Biden would agree to end those Trump-era tariffs on steel and aluminium, but as she put it, a weekend was not enough to come to that agreement because it's very complex. So she said they're going to keep working on that. They may be frozen for a couple months. That was a bit unclear. There are other issues on which they disagree. We know that, so the EU is opening up for vaccinated American tourists, and they would like the U.S. to do the same for European tourists who are still banned from entering the United States, even if they're vaccinated, for any leisure travel. That did not come up at the press conference. It's unclear if they brought that up. We know that the governments of France and Germany are pushing the U.S. on this issue. So maybe in some days we'll learn whether or not that was brought up. There are some hopes that in early July, the Biden administration might lift that ban on European tourists if they're vaccinated.